Hello, today is Tuesday, February 16th, and this is the 47th chapter of Genesis, heading into the home stretch. We have the narrative of Joseph and Egypt and his family continuing. Today, Jacob, the father, Jacob Israel, gets to meet Pharaoh. There's also an oath taken, an Abrahamic oath, and there is a better picture of the economic scarcity and inequity in the land of Egypt because of the famine. So we get a little more details. We had gotten some in chapter 41 about the famine, but we have a little more details as to the great calamity that the Egyptians are under. They come to Joseph, who is in charge of everything, and they say, "We have no more money." Joseph had all the money that he could have gotten for the grain that he sold, and they say, "We have no more money. We will sell you our livestock." So he goes ahead and buys their livestock and gives them enough grain for that year. The next year, they'd eaten all that, and they came back to him again. They said, "We don't, we don't have any more money. We've given you all of our livestock. All we have left is our land and our own selves." And so he says, so they say, "We'll give you our land and our bodies as slaves in exchange for food." And that's what they do. And so a lot of Egypt becomes, except for the priests, becomes the territory or belonging to the Pharaoh, and the people become slaves of the Pharaoh. But really, because Joseph is the overseer of all this, they become Joseph becomes the landowner and the slave owner. So what happens is, and we'll see this in the next book of the Bible, the backlash against the favoritism that Joseph showed to his family. And that's sort of why this narrative is brought out, to show how difficult it was for the Egyptians during this famine. But Joseph was fair with them. He gave them food in exchange for what they had to offer. And that is all explained in chapter 47. And the very last bit of chapter 47 is the beginning of the deathbed narrative of Jacob. We'll continue on. He doesn't die in this chapter, but he does establish how many years he's had when Pharaoh asks him, and he replies about the length of his life. And then in the last bit of the chapter, he says that he asks his son to take an oath that he will return when he dies. Joseph will return him to the burial place so he can be buried with his ancestors. And he said, "Swear to me," and he swore to him. And then Israel bowed himself on the head of his bed. And you'll see in this chapter, he says, "If I found favor with you, put your hand under my thigh and promise me to deal loyally and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt." So the hand under the thigh, if you remember, this was the oath that Abraham took with his servant when he sent his servant to go find a wife for Isaac. There was this hand under the thigh, and that's just the reference there. It's a commonly way to make an oath. And but I think that a lot of people have had conversations like this with their parents, at least loved ones that are older than them, a generation ahead. Do not bury me in the land of Egypt. For my mother, it was, we went to a funeral together, and she said, "Don't have a giant jumbo screen picture of me hanging over my casket." She didn't want that because it was like a giant picture. It's huge. It's just one of those things she said to me. "Take note, child. This is what you need to know." And this is really what's happening between Joseph and Jacob. Jacob Israel is getting on in years, and he knows it's going to very beginning for him to lay down and sleep with his fathers, and go to his ancestors, as it says in my translation. And he's like, "Yeah, I can't be buried here in Egypt. I mean, it's great that we're here. The livestock have enough to eat. Whatever. I got to go back to Egypt, back to the land where my ancestors are buried and be buried there." So that's a really important thing. I think it's interesting. And you might think that because the story is told again about the establishment of Jacob and his sons in Egypt after they discover Joseph and the famine happens, and it's kind of told over the course of several chapters again and again. It's repetitive. It's actually the same voice. It's the Yahweh's voice. I don't know why they keep repeating that, but they just really want to make sure that you know that Joseph got permission initially, and then Joseph made a deal, and then he said move to land of, and then they moved in, and these were the people that came with them, and there were 70 of them, and then they went to Pharaoh, and Jacob gets to meet Pharaoh. So one of the significances of this is that the new Pharaoh is a Pharaoh that did not know Jacob. So this Pharaoh does know Jacob. So the new Pharaoh that's coming in the next book of the Bible, where it necessitates an Exodus, that's the name of the book, is a different Pharaoh who did not get to meet Jacob Israel. So this is just the continuation of the narrative. An insight that I saw was just, for me, the repetitiveness of it, the feeling that, okay, yeah, we know that's where they are. They're in Goshen. We know, and they tell us why again, and then it's all there. And also this re-emphasis of how bad the famine is and what it's doing to the people of Egypt, and how they owe their souls now to Joseph because of what he did, and that he is in charge of the storehouses of grain that have been stored up for such a time as this. So there's no welfare system, so they have to pay for everything, or insurance, calamity insurance. But yeah, they're pretty much owe everything to the Pharaoh now because of the famine. So it's tough times. And I know we can relate to that in our life today. We're in tough times right now. In what ways have we mortgaged ourselves to Pharaoh? Maybe you can contemplate that in your own mind. What do we owe to this unholy person that thinks he's God, and refers to himself as such? So, you know, that can be part of our lesson too, is to think about, in order to survive, or in order to do what we think we need to survive, the way we like to live, or the way what we like to do, we kind of sell out to Pharaoh sometimes. Um, and that's something to think about. So I hope you have a blessed day. Happy reading the last 3 chapters of Genesis.